So have you ever tried rendering an orange segment and it just turns out to be like a block of cheese? So today's your lucky day because I'm gonna show you exactly how to render an orange segment. So first you're gonna start with this reference, which by the way, you can find all of the references, the sketches and everything to start with in the description on my Gumroad absolutely for free. So anyway, we're gonna start with the sketch first to draw our little orange. And using the reference, of course, the whole way through. First, we're going to just do a layer underneath the sketch. Make sure to separate your layers out. It doesn't matter what program you use, whether it's Photoshop, anything, it really doesn't matter. But do a layer underneath and just pick like a mid-tone. You feel free to like pick the color I use. That's totally cool. But we're just doing like a base. After that, we're going to create a layer on top and clip it. By clip it means that once we draw into it, it can't go out of the bounds. If you don't know what clipping is in your software, just search up an equivalent. And we're going to use the soft brush to just do a quick kind of like values. So look at the reference, and again, you can copy step by step what I'm doing and just do quick values. You can do it in black and white, by the way, if you're struggling with color. Next, we're just going to go into the primary kind of like shadow areas. So if you can see on the reference, it has like kind of like some shadow, and then it also has some like lighting and stuff, and it's kind of like the main kind of, I guess, values again. All this is in color. If you're not familiar with or not comfortable with color, do this in black and white first. But I'm kind of just like figuring out like the main kind of, I guess, values that's going on in a bit of a sharper way. So we have like the soft before this to really get it as a general. Now we're going to go in a little bit and just kind of sharpen it up and work our way up to it, and just kind of use the reference, determine where the lights, where the shadows are, and just build into it that way. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. For this, I like to use my rendering brush, which you can find, again, all the brushes in my Gumroad for free. And the rendering brush is like soft on the outside, but it's hard on the inside, which makes it really nice for rendering. Because if you use a brush that's like really, really like hard edges, you're just gonna get, and you like put the opacity down, so you make it kind of see-through, you're just gonna get like loads of like overlapping shapes that look really weird. We don't want that at this point. We want to work into it, and we want it to just like not have loads of overlapping weird shapes. We want it to be like have some substance, no transparency in the middle, but on the edges it's soft, so you can use it to blend. So you can see here I'm carrying on. I've kind of built a little bit of like form with some values like behind the sketch in the base, where there was that little bit like of orange behind what we can see. And now I'm doing this a bit premature, but I decided to kind of work into it with the highlights. Now I very soon realize, again, it's a bit premature to do the highlights. You can see I do highlights very crisp with the lasso tool to make it really crisp edges. And the highlights are obviously very bright, and you'll be able to see in a minute that I realize that it's way too quickly to do any sort of highlights. So there you go. You can see I figured that out already. I keep them there just because why not? Like I've already done a bit, not that many. And I realized that we kind of need to like go into this and really figure out what the segments look like. So if you look at the reference, you can kind of see that it's got these highlights that make it look like really juicy and really like crisp. But underneath that, there's like some really faint, and not really faint, but fainter, and not hard edge, so not very crisp, like a bit fuzzy on the outside looking. Like segments and like kind of like, yeah, segments. So that's what I do here. You can see here that I'm working into this, adding some more shadows as well to really build up the values where I see the most shadowing. Now, it is really pay attention, like you don't need to draw every single segment perfectly. Like you really, really don't need to do that. Don't feel tempted to do that. We just need to do it kind of like roughly, and I didn't copy exactly what the segments look like in this. I just kind of did it however I felt. And then afterwards, you'll see it will all come together when we crisp it up with some highlights, which will come later after we've done these segments. If you want this whole video not sped up, like the live time, again, I have that in the file in the Gumroad in the description. So you can just watch this like in real time, not sped up, and follow along. Now, the way I learned rendering, and this is going to sound absolutely insane, but I actually would like do the same. I would go and download, which wouldn't be free. I would actually pay for artists that I like because they didn't have it for free. We do. I have it for free here, but I would go and pay for artists I like files, and then also like the videos that's not sped up. And I would literally sit there for like hours recreating every single stroke I see them do. Which is insane. And you might be thinking, well, you're just copying someone else's work. Yes, that's the whole point. Like, it's for learning purposes. I wasn't claiming or showing that to anyone else. By the way, I don't care if you share this. Like, do this, use it, and share it. 100%. Like, copy their strokes. Tag me. This is the whole point of this. It's not me being precious of my work. It's me trying to give you a learning resource, and you can literally just take it and use it however you like. So that I'm still doing the segments right now. And again, if you want to copy or have kind of tutorial, I guess, like with this, without it being sped up, then you can find it there. But you can see now we've kind of built up a good amount of segments, which I'm happy about. And it's going to be a great base to add those sharp highlights on top of. Without doing this step that we've just done now, it would look really flat. So this builds a bit of like texture underneath those sharp highlights. And you can see how I'm working in with some really light bits, some really like, again, building up those values, some really deeper kind of red, orangey parts to really like make stuff pop, and use the reference to see where those kind of sit. Like, understand, if you've done the sphere exercise before where you can like render a sphere and make it look like a sphere or a box or a rectangle by block cube in a space, then it's the same thing. You're just kind of imagining these segments to be like, I guess, kind of like spherical next to each other. You can see here I've used a hard brush to sharpen up some edges as well. So really, whenever I render, you start off pretty soft and you work into it as you go along. Like, you start with a bigger, like, you can remember at the beginning we just did like an overall soft brush, just overall values. And then we started working in overall, still keeping it pretty large shapes with the rendering brush. And then the further you go into it, the smaller the details kind of become, and also the harder the edge of the brush comes. So the hard edge, sometimes I use that like to really establish large shapes at the beginning if we need, but in this case, in this orange, we didn't need that. We just using really the hard edge to outline a bit of the orange to make the edges crisp. And then now we're going into with the lasso tool to really do those highlights, which is going to take a while, but really all I'm going to be doing for probably the next entirety of the rest of the video is just sharpening this up, and mainly doing that with this lasso tool and painting in all of these details, which you can see in the reference are like the major highlights, very, very crisp. The lasso tool creates those shapes, like compared to just using a pen with the hard brush, it creates these like very crisp, hard edge shapes. The pen tool kind of creates more like blobs. That's how I'm going to like describe it. And like blobby lines and not so crisp shapes. And we want to determine when we want to use both either. Like, we don't want to always use the lasso tool for absolutely everything because they're going to have no contrast. Like, if I use the lasso tool for all of this, including the segments like underneath that we kind of established with the rendering brush was a bit soft, then the highlights wouldn't pop out. So that's why we do that. we want to make sure we keep the really crisp highlights as per the reference at the top on their own layer. Remember that we should be doing layers, and they pop out because the stuff underneath isn't as crisp. There's a contrast there. So again, for pretty much the rest of this video, I'm going to be doing more highlights. I'll put my input whenever I feel like there's something more to share. So stay tuned, make sure to watch the rest of this just so you understand fully what's going on. And if anything else comes up, I'll tune in, which I'm sure they will. We need to add like a little droplet at the bottom, some edges, more on the edges, but you can see it's really coming together so far, and it just takes a little while to really do all of those little highlights. I like to like zoom out sometimes, just to see like overall what it's looking like, because when you're rendering and you're always zoomed in like this to really do the details and really see what you're doing, it can get like, you can lose the overall shape and the overall like what it looks like. So it's good to check. And you can see now, after I've done those highlights, I realized that we don't perhaps have as much shadowing or darker values to really make this look like it has dimension as I would want. So I went into the layer below the highlights again to really add a few more like darker spots there and keeping it. By the way, all of this is pretty high saturation. If you don't know what saturation is, it means like on the hue cube on the right, top right, we have like some that's like a hue cube where on the right it's like really saturated color, so it's like very bright, I guess. You could call it like very colorful. And then as you move towards the left, it gets like more dull. Obviously we have some more dull, like especially on the whiter areas, like what I'm painting in right now with the drop is a little bit dull. But and the whiter areas, but the actual orange is very highly saturated. It's like really pretty highly saturated, and that is kind of my style, I guess. I like using high saturation. And I like to say it's a skill in itself learning colors, but it does really high saturation I think is a little bit easier than painting all in low saturation. It can look really muddy. So right now we're pretty much done. Like I just put in that little that drop, which you can see it's gonna like some basically it's like a little border with a little bit of darker value inside. It's not too difficult to do a drop like that. And then I'm just sharpening up a few areas of the edges with the background color. I like to do that just to make it crisp in some edges, not the whole thing, otherwise it will really stand out too much. It would look like a sticker. Like it would look really ridiculous if you just like make all the edges really sharp around the edge. So avoid doing that. But at this point it's pretty much done. I think I'm just playing around with some layers, and that is how you draw an orange peel. Not an orange peel. An orange segment. That's how you draw an orange segment.